As many of us would know, Sagicor has been approached by a company who has entered into a proposed arrangement with a company called Alignvest, a Canadian company, for the acquisition, and I use the term acquisition fairly loosely, of all of the outstanding shares of Sagicor. Today, we are going to take a little bit of a deeper look at some of the details of this proposed arrangement and the impact or possible outcome for shareholders, current shareholders, and those who may be considering what to do when the eventual vote comes along for voting either for or against this proposed arrangement. So we'll take a look today at the overview of the arrangement. We'll look at some of the potential benefits and risks of this particular deal for shareholders. We'll consider what are some of the shareholders' next steps. And finally, we'll ask the question, what should I do as a Sagicor shareholder? So let's look at the arrangement overview first of all. And as simply put as possible, Sagicor Financial Corporation, which we call Sagicor or Old Sagicor or SFC, would have entered into an agreement with Canada-based Alignvest Acquisition 2 Corporation, who we'll call Alignvest AQY or New Sagicor throughout the presentation. What does this mean for you, the Sagicor shareholder who currently holds shares of Old Sagicor? Well, if the deal goes through as proposed, Old Sagicor or your current Sagicor shares are going to be delisted from the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange, from the Barbados Stock Exchange, and the London Stock Exchange. Now, in addition, you will be offered the opportunity to receive cash and or shares in New Sagicor or AQY, with some conditions applying, and we'll get a little bit into those conditions a little bit later on. And with respect to AQY or New Sagicor, they are going to effectively own 100% of Sagicor's listed shares, currently listed shares. Investors of or shareholders of Old Sagicor are going to receive a deemed exchange price of US $1.75 per share. And we'll speak a little bit more about why we say deemed. The company AQY, which is already listed on the Toronto Stock Exchange, will be renamed Sagicor Financial Company Limited and will also be referred to as New Sagicor. And as mentioned, it's listed on the Toronto Stock Exchange as we speak. Now, who is Alignvest? Many investors may be wondering. Well, it's something called a Special Purpose Acquisition Company or a SPAC in Canada, which is a company that has been formed with a specific purpose of buying another company or group of companies. It's sponsored by Alignvest Management Corporation, hence the name. It's already listed, as we mentioned, on the Toronto Stock Exchange in Canada as AQY. So investors can Google AQY or look at Yahoo Finance and search for Alignvest 2 on the quote lookup, and you can find the share price. And as of right now, the only proposed investment of Alignvest or AQY will be its ownership of Sagicor Financial Corporation. Now, in addition, AQY or New Sagicor will have some or should have some additional capital, which it may or may not use to make additional acquisitions which are strategically aligned to the business model of Sagicor as we know it. So what will shareholders receive? What will you, the current Sagicor shareholder, receive if the deal is going to go through? Well, for those of us who owned or shares on or before December 6, 2018, and that's quite an important date, you have the option for shares that you hold up to 10,000 shares, your first 10,000 shares, to receive US $1.75 per share paid fully in cash. Alternatively, you can opt for some part of that first 10,000 shares or all of those first 10,000 shares in the shares of New Sagicor, which again is already listed on the Toronto Stock Exchange. For any shares that you own in excess of 10,000 shares of the current Sagicor, you will receive $1.75 per share paid in kind in the form of shares in new Sagicor. So you're not going to receive any cash for this particular shareholding above 10,000 shares. You will receive new shares in kind. Now, for those of us who purchased Sagicor after December 6, 2018, for all of your shares, you would receive $1.75 US per share paid in kind in the form of shares in new Sagicor. What does that really mean? How many new Sagicor shares will shareholders get? Well, it will depend quite reasonably on the exchange ratio. And the exchange ratio, when we broke it down, is effectively that $1.75 US per share divided by $10, which is the quoted price of AQY on the Toronto Stock Exchange per share, multiplied by the Canadian to US dollar rate. And that's simply to convert the $10 Canadian price to a US dollar price to fix the exchange ratio. And the FX rate or the foreign exchange rate will be observed, I think, 1 or 2 business days before the effective date of the deal. And the specifics of the specific fixing date of the exchange rate can be found in the explanatory statement and circular, which was provided by Sagicor and is already on its website and is also on Bourse's website. Okay, so the formula was nice. Let's take a real world example using some actual numbers of how many Sagicor shares, or new Sagicor shares rather, we could receive. Let's assume that the closing exchange rate on the day at which the exchange rate is supposed to be fixed is US 0.76086 cents per Canadian dollar, or 76.086 cents per Canadian dollar. Well, that exchange ratio would work out to be just around 0.23. In other words, for every 100 Sagicor shares that you own, you would be receiving 23 shares of new Sagicor shares. So let me repeat that. For every 100 shares of existing Sagicor shares you owned, assuming the closing exchange rate was, as is the case in this particular example, you would be receiving 23 shares of AQY or new Sagicor. When will the deal be completed? Well, the deal is yet to be approved by shareholders of both Sagicor and AQY. However, it is expected to close sometime in the second quarter of 2019. Alignvest or AQY has until the end of May 2019 to conclude this acquisition of Sagicor, unless it is granted some extension by the approval of the Toronto Stock Exchange. And as we will see very shortly, it seems increasingly likely that an extension may have to be requested to make sure that this deal does in fact go through. And we see this now some of the latest developments. On Carnival Friday, or last Friday rather, there was a notice published which stated that Sagicor would have delayed its shareholder meeting, which was initially set for the 13th of March 2019. I think that's next week, Wednesday. And there's no new date as yet determined for that particular shareholder meeting to take place. At the same time, Alignvest would have delayed its own special shareholder meeting for the approval of the deal, which was initially set for March 11th, 2019, that's next Monday. And the new date of that particular meeting is now set for the 23rd of May, 2019. Now, we can all wonder as to why the meeting was delayed. By Sagicor's communications and our best estimates, it may be the case that shareholders may need some more time to get all of the requisite approvals in place to vote either for or against the deal, as well as to understand the mechanics of the deal and what is the potential value proposition of the deal to Sagicor shareholders. So we will, of course, keep all of our investors updated as more news comes to the public and comes to light. And of course, we'll continue to place our own observation and look at what these new developments mean for Sagicor shareholders. So what are some of the shareholder benefits purported out of the proposed arrangement? Well, there are several, but of those being most important to you, the Sagicor shareholder, is the prospect of better valuations. Now, better valuations will come from several sources, and one of the most prominently marketed sources has been the effect of listing on a much larger and a much more liquid exchange, such as the Toronto Stock Exchange. The Toronto Stock Exchange, just to put it in some perspective, has a market capitalization of 2.2 trillion US dollars. That's versus the Trinidad and Tobago composite market capitalization of just around 19 billion US dollars. So to put it in perspective, the Toronto Stock Exchange is almost 115 times the size of the Trinidad and Tobago composite. Secondly, and of equal importance, the stock is going to be listed in Canadian dollars. Now, it has long been a challenge, not just in Sagicor, but for most investors internationally looking at Caribbean stocks, that access to currency and being able to exit a position after entering has always been a challenge because of access to foreign exchange. With Sagicor being listed in Canadian dollars on a Canadian exchange, the notion is that much more international investor interest will be gleaned. And with that international interest becoming heightened and more confidence being placed in the ability to enter and exit positions in Sagicor, it should increase or the price discovery or perceived value of or value recognition in new Sagicor. So that's one of the main sources of better valuations, the Toronto Stock Exchange effect or the TSX effect. The second value proposition, which should lead to increased share prices or valuations, is that with the offer, it is expected that the shareholder base of Sagicor will shrink. The shareholder base has been described as a disaggregated shareholder base. What do we mean by that? Well, at present, there are more than 34,000 shareholders of Sagicor as it exists. 90% of those shareholders own 10,000 or less shares, which equates to just around 27% of the ownership of the company. The remaining 4,000 other shareholders own more than 10,000 shares, and of course would own just over 63% of the company, or 73% of the company. So with the deal going forward, it is expected that many of the smaller shareholders may opt to take the cash option and exit their holdings of Sagicor Financial Corporation. Now, why is this a likely occurrence? Well, investors may recall that sometime back in 2002, the early 2000s or thereabouts, Sagicor was formerly known as the Barbados Mutual Life Assurance Society, and it demutualized to become Sagicor Financial Corporation. With that, many policyholders would have received shares in Sagicor, and therefore, to access liquidity from their policies now converted to shares, they continue to sell sporadically and are not particularly sensitive to prices. And that is one assumption as to why the price of Sagicor has never truly reflected the value built into the company. So with this proposed deal, it is expected that more value recognition will come, as the smaller shareholders have a very attractive exit point from their holdings of Sagicor shares. Of course, let's take a look at what that valuation story looks like. And Sagicor, prior to the announcement of this arrangement, was trading at a price to book multiple of 0.54 times. Its Canadian peers, so companies similar to Sagicor in operations, trade at a multiple of 1.25 times. And just to put it in perspective, a higher multiple means a higher share price, means a higher value. And the new Sagicor's 2019 targeted multiple, if the deal goes through, is expected to trade somewhere around 1 times market to book. Similarly, prior to the announcement, Sagicor would have been trading at a price to earnings multiple of around 6.6 times. After the deal, it is expected that Sagicor will trade at a price to earnings ratio of around 7.8 times. And when we consider the Canadian peers, they trade at a level of around 8.8 times price to earnings. So the story then is that with the deal going through as proposed, there will be better value recognition for Sagicor shareholders. Now, how has the share price reacted to the proposed deal? Well, if you take a look, Sagicor's share price over the past 2 years or so would have been declining from around $9, steadily declining despite some improvement in earnings to just around $7. When the deal was announced, that share price spiked to $10.50 PP, $10.50 PP, and since then has bounced around with some uncertainty and a need for appreciation of the deal and its benefits or potential benefits to investors being digested. So it would have hit a high of $10.50, fallen to just around $8 or $8.50 thereabouts, bounced back up to that $10 mark. And with the news of the delay in the shareholder meeting, that would have increased some uncertainty as to whether or not the deal will in fact go through. And the share price would have reacted appropriately or reacted, falling from that $10 level to just around $8.84, which was its closing price at close of market today. Now, in addition to the better valuation by dint of shifting exchanges and having a wider shareholder base and trading in a major global currency, there is the growth opportunities that will come along with the arrangement. Now, the acquisition of Scotia Trinidad and Scotia Jamaica's insurance businesses, which has already been announced subject to regulator approval, is expected to add just around $30 million annually in earnings to Sagicor. And we're talking about a company that earns just around $80 to $100 million, depending on how events occur, which may or may not lead to increased insurance claims. More importantly, in the long term, however, there is the experience that's going to be gleaned by dint of having that Alignvest Investment Management Corporation on the side of Sagicor. In particular, they would be able to implement operational improvements, perhaps reduce costs, improve efficiency, improve profitability, as well as opening the doors to identifying and being able to capture new opportunities in the form of acquisitions or other business opportunities which may come along, partnerships, etc., which will all or should all redound to the benefit of Sagicor and its shareholders. So again, some of the shareholder benefits, just to recap, the prospect of improved valuations, one, and two, in the main, increased growth, the increased potential for growth opportunities. So what are some of the shareholder risks then? Well, there are always several risks when making any particular investment. And Sagicor would have laid out in its shareholder circular and explanatory statements several of these risks. Now, we will take a look at some of the main ones. And one of the major risks that we can see is market risk. In particular, that the price of new Sagicor could go lower once it's listed on the Toronto Stock Exchange. As is usually the experience with more liquid and more active stock exchanges, share prices tend to be a little bit more volatile, certainly more volatile than shareholders of Sagicor, and in general, Caribbean shareholders have been accustomed to, with the exception of recent share price movements of Sagicor. Now, the Canadian dollar could lose value, which also presents a market risk. And to explain this a bit further, you are receiving a notional or deemed $1.75 US per share in exchange for your old Sagicor shares if you accept the deal. And if that is the case, you are now receiving an asset that's traded in Canadian dollars. If the Canadian dollar loses value, the value of your Sagicor share in US dollar equivalent would also deteriorate. Now, while that is a risk, the flip side could also occur, and the price of new Sagicor shares could go up in one instance, and also the value of the Canadian dollar could appreciate or increase in value versus the US dollar, in which case the value of your Sagicor or new Sagicor shares rather could increase. Another particular risk factor that has been at the forefront of several main investors' minds, and should be, is taxation risk. In particular, are there going to be any new tax considerations? Are there going to be any withholding taxes levied on dividends and or capital gains over time from my Sagicor share position? Now, the company Sagicor has done as much as possible, as it explained in its circular, to mitigate any impact of, or to keep the tax treatment rather similar to how we as Sagicor shareholders are currently treated. That being the case, they cannot guarantee, and no company in fact could guarantee, that US tax laws or Canadian tax laws, Bermudan tax laws, etc., could change in the future and impact the tax treatment of dividends and or capital gains for shareholders. And of course, investors are encouraged to consult your tax advisors to ensure that they understand what are some of the risks that could be involved in this move. So, we've taken a look at some of the benefits, potential benefits and risks. What are some of the next steps that shareholders should take? Well, up until Carnival Friday, it was fairly the timeline and the next steps were fairly certain. On March 11th, there was supposed to be the deadline to submit your proxy form. On March 13th, there would have been the shareholder meeting. The shareholder meeting has now been delayed and no new date has yet to be announced or has been announced as yet. Subject to the appropriate number of votes being received, on the 22nd of March, there would have been a court filing of petition by Sagicor to get the deal over the line. And on the 31st of March 2019, that would have been your deadline to submit your election consideration form, which means whether or not you are opting to receive cash or shares or both, as you would have been eligible to. Again, all of these dates have now come into question, and that is probably one of the reasons why we have seen such a sharp reaction in the price of Sagicor over the past few days on the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange. A little bit more about your proxy form. When the new date is in fact announced, your proxy form allows you to vote for or against the arrangement. Only shares held on record as of January 31st, 2019 would be eligible to vote. Now, that date may be subject to change given that the shareholder meeting is going to be shifted further into the future. And of course, the submission date or the submission deadline would have been 4 days from today, but now we are not sure. A new date has yet to be announced as of at the time of this webinar. And you can physically submit your copy of your proxy form or physically submit your proxy form to Sagicor at 16 Queen's Park West, or alternatively, and what we find to be more convenient, email a scanned and signed form to legal_proxies at sagicor.com. A little bit more about your election consideration form. You are free to choose between cash, shares, or both up to 10,000 shares. Only if those shares, the shares that you own, were held as at December 6, 2018. Now again, this date could be subject to change as the deal is drifted further and further into the future. You'll have to await word from Sagicor as to whether these dates are still valid. Similarly, the election consideration form submission deadline would have been March 31st, so 24 days from today if that date was held effective. But again, we are still going to have to await further updates from Sagicor as to the revised dates. And similarly, you could submit your physical copy to First Citizens Brokerage and Advisory Services, who are the deal correspondents in Trinidad, or again, very conveniently, email your scan and sign copies to legal_election at sagicor.com. So just to reiterate, the share price of Sagicor would have been climbing up towards that target price range of between $11.10 to $11.90 PT equivalent, with investors growing in confidence that the deal was going to take place or was going to take place within a particular timeline. With the shift in those particular timelines now, and those particular timelines being as yet defined, that would have introduced some uncertainty, in our view, into the market and into investors' minds, and we would have seen that uncertainty reflected in the price movement of Sagicor shares over the past few days. Now, if you're looking for these forms, you can check out the Sagicor website, or you could conveniently check out Bourse's website, for which we have a dedicated tab. And as you can see in the top tab, circled in red, there's a Sagicor tab. You can also check out our scrolling banner on our homepage, Important Sagicor Shareholder Documents. And to note, these documents, of course, will have to be updated with the new dates in mind as soon as they are announced and as soon as the new documents are published. And this is just a view of what the web page would look like, where you can easily access the proxy form, the consideration election form, etc., all through Bourse's website. Okay, so the most important question for all of our attendees: what should I, as a Sagicor shareholder, do? Is this in fact something that you should pick up and run with? Well, it all depends on your needs and your belief in the deal. Those of us who are leaning towards supporting the deal and voting for the deal to go through, some of your motivators might be whether you would like to receive US dollar cash for an asset which would have purchased in PT dollars. That is, if you bought the shares before December 6, 2018. Whether or not you would like this share that you purchased in PT dollars to be converted into a share that you could sell on a Canadian exchange and receive Canadian dollar sale proceeds for, which can be easily converted into US dollars. If you believe the benefits that will accrue by dint of new Sagicor being traded on a larger, more active, more liquid exchange, then you should be leaning towards voting for this particular deal. And most importantly, if you believe in the improved prospects of the firm in terms of growth and identification of new opportunities to capitalize on, then you should be supporting this deal, opting to receive new Sagicor shares, which you can trade through a local broker, just like Bourse, on the Canadian Stock Exchange, or the Toronto Stock Exchange. If, however, you are in the against camp and you feel that the savanna grass is indeed not greener on the other side, Some of your concerns might be the dilution in ownership, the fact that you may prefer to have your shares traded on regional exchanges such as the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange or the Barbados Stock Exchange. If you don't have any particular need for US dollars and or Canadian dollars, and if you believe that Sagicor is good as it is right now, those would be some of the factors which would have you lean towards the against vote, in which case you do not support the deal. And if you do not support the deal and would like to exit your position, you might want to sell your shares on the local exchange. What are the next steps? Well, again, the next steps would have been thrown off a little bit by dint of the shareholder meeting being pushed further into the future or delayed. Now, just to give investors a graphical representation of some of the key dates, for those of you who own Sagicor shares up to, well, on or before December 6, 2018, you can choose cash, or you're eligible to choose cash for your first 10,000 shares at US $1.75 per share. For those of us who own shares on or before January 31st, 2019, you are eligible to vote for or against the offer. Up until Carnival Friday, or very recently, the voting deadline would have been March 11th, and we are now here at March 7th. But that voting deadline has now been pushed into the future, and you would have had, or you will still have to submit your proxy form either physically or by email. And you should have a period during which you can elect to receive either cash, shares, or both if you're eligible, which would be maybe perhaps 2 or 3 weeks after the voting deadline. So those are some of the key next steps. Again, because of the deferral in the shareholder meeting, several of these key deadlines or submission dates have been pushed further into the future. So you'll have to be very aware, and continue to check out our Bourse weekly reviews, etc., for the new deadlines and updated submission dates for your proxy form and or your election consideration form. So let's take a look into the future. Let's assume that you received your US dollar cash and or your shares of new Sagicor, which trade on the Toronto Stock Exchange. What's next? Well, for those of us who receive cash, you could consider several new investments if you're choosing not to treat yourself, such as US dollar mutual funds, investing in international stocks, international exchange traded funds, and international bonds. For those of us who are who opt to receive shares in new Sagicor, you have two choices, of course. One, you could hold on to your shares, and secondly, you could sell your shares in new Sagicor and reinvest the proceeds. Conveniently, you can do all of those through our Bourse Trader platform, which gives all of our investors global reach with local access to a world of opportunities that is international capital markets. So we've looked at today some of the key considerations for shareholders and investors. We've looked at some of the potential benefits and risks. We've looked at the next steps. And now we would like to open up the forum for questions and answers. And you can submit your questions through the moderated chat, which should be on the lower right-hand side of your screen. And we are quite willing and able to, or we'll try to address as many of these questions as possible right now. So let's take a look at the first question. Do you anticipate that Sagicor can or will pay a special dividend similar to what FTI did when it tried to list on the New York Stock Exchange? Okay, that's a great question. Let me see if I can do it justice. Well, First Caribbean International at that point in time was overly capitalized relative to international standards, if I'm not mistaken. And that special dividend would have been to pay out some of this excess capital to its shareholders and get more in line with its peers, which would have been traded on the New York Stock Exchange. Whether or not Sagicor chooses to pay a special dividend is a good question. It's a difficult one to answer at this particular point in time, but one gets the sense that it will more than likely be not the case. And the reason is that it will be using its cash, one, to allow an exit for its current shareholders who would like to exit, and secondly, to pursue aggressive growth opportunities, such as the purchase of the Scotia and the Scotia operations, insurance operations in Trinidad and Jamaica. So intuitively, it may not be as likely that investors will receive a special dividend. However, things can always change. Next question, and the next question is, if you want to exchange for the new shares, what can you do now, as in today or tomorrow? Well, it depends on if you already own the Sagicor shares. If you don't own the Sagicor shares, if you don't own Sagicor shares right now, and you'd like to exchange them, well, step one is go out and buy some Sagicor shares. The good news is, as at today's closing price of $8.84, that is a 20% discount relative to the deemed exchange price of, or the lower range of that exchange price after factoring in dilution of around $11.10. So if you would like to take that decision to purchase these Sagicor shares as a route to get access to a hard currency, and you believe that the deal will eventually go through, then a price of $8.84 seems to be a good value proposition, all of the factors held constant. If you already own the Sagicor shares and would like to exchange them, well, when the day comes and the official shareholder vote is set to take place, you would need, the first step is to vote for the deal to go through, and you, along with the rest of the Sagicor shareholders, once as the requisite number of shares or votes rather are received to allow the deal to go through, would then move to the election consideration portion, where you would opt to exchange your shares of old Sagicor for new shares or shares in new Sagicor. Next question, please. What is the difference between the cash consideration and the first share consideration? Okay, so somebody has been reading. That's excellent. The cash consideration is basically you're going to get $1.75 US in cash. The first share consideration is that you will be receiving shares in new Sagicor and not cash. Okay, next question. They're coming fast and furious. If I choose to take the offer, what to do first? I think we mentioned that. What precautions should customers of Sagicor take? Is there any risk to client stakeholders? So that's an excellent question. So Sagicor is not going to effectively change in its operations as we understand it. It is just a change of ownership. So effectively, those 34,000 shareholders who own Sagicor right now have a decision to make as to whether or not they exchange their shares for shares of new Sagicor. But the business operations of Sagicor as is should not be affected. Next question, please. Can US dollar proceeds from shares be deposited directly to a US dollar unit trust account in Trinidad? That is a good question. As of right now, I believe if you are eligible to and opt to accept cash, you will be receiving a check, a US dollar check, and you would have to contact unit trust corporation to find out whether they would be in a position to accept that particular check. I don't see any reason why not, but again, it would depend on the policies and procedures of unit trust. But a direct deposit, again, I'm not 100% certain as to whether or not that's something that will be part of the settlement procedures as was stated. Next question. Is old Sagicor expected to pay a dividend in April or May of 2019? Well, the company continues to exist as is, and while I cannot definitively say that they will, I imagine that as part of normal business operations, a dividend should be declared and should be paid. Next question, and several questions, and thank you, and keep the questions coming. We'll try to address as many of them as possible. How will I track my Sagicor shares once listed on a Toronto Stock Exchange? Okay, that's an easy one. The shares are already listed, and if you check out finance.yahoo.com, and in the tab marked quote lookup, you look for, I believe, AQY-A.co, you will actually see the price of AQY right now, which will eventually become new Sagicor. All right, so that's fairly easy, and Yahoo Finance or finance.yahoo.com is free for everyone, and it shows live pricing of most of the stocks listed internationally. Next question, what is the typical dividend policy of similar companies on the Toronto Stock Exchange or Toronto Exchange? That's a good question. That's something we have to do research into. What we can say is that Sagicor intends, or new Sagicor intends, to pay the same amount of absolute dividend to investors as you would currently enjoy, to investors of existing Sagicor, as you would currently enjoy at the moment with old Sagicor. Next question, what are the differences in cost of selling shares in the new market as against the cost of local broker fees, etc.? Well, that's an excellent question, and I'm glad somebody asked it. On the existing exchanges, well, in Trinidad at least, the fee is 1.5% on the first 50,000, 1.25% on the second 50,000, and 1% on anything above $100,000. With our board trader platform, we have a fee of 0.5% because it's a much more liquid and active market. So the cost will actually be a little bit lower, or actually significantly lower for the retail investor who would be opting to sell their Sagicor shares on the international market. Okay, next question. Once the deal is approved at the shareholder meeting, what do you then do if you own less than 10,000 shares? Well, again, if you own these shares on or before December 6, 2018, I imagine that your question would mean, how do I get my US dollars? You would have to submit your election consideration form either physically to First Citizens Brokerage Advisory Services or electronically by email, and elect to receive cash for your shares below 10,000. If you own less than 10,000 shares and you wish to receive cash. If you wish to receive shares, you can nominate or elect to receive shares in new Sagicor. Next question. It is, can I submit my proxy form to Bourse? Well, the easiest thing to do, in fact, would be to fill out your proxy form, which you can access on our Bourse website, and you'll make the latest edition or the official edition available once as it's made available to us. And the easiest thing to do is, in fact, email it to election proxies, I think it is, or legal proxies at sagicor.com, and you'll have all of that information, and all of that information rather should be available on the proxy form itself. So as opposed to submitting it to Bourse and having us submit it for you, you can go the direct and, as we feel, the easier route of emailing it directly. Next question, and they're coming fast and furious. Would dividends from new Sagicor be paid to a local account or to the brokerage account that shares are held in. Okay, so that should be fairly straightforward. The dividends that would be paid will be paid into your brokerage account that the shares are held in, as is the case for most international stocks currently. Next question, how likely is it that the deal will go through? Well, that in fact is the $536 million question. The deal at this point was supported very favorably by the team of Sagicor and was also heavily supported by the Alignvest Corporation team. Now, to put it in perspective, Alignvest, this Alignvest or AQI was created solely for the purpose of acquiring a company. They've spent roughly the last year and a half putting things in place to get the deal over the line or completed. There are, in the explanatory statements, several fees that will have to be paid by both Sagicor and or Alignvest should this deal not go through. So we are of the view that it is likely or more than likely that both parties are very interested in having this deal complete as soon as is possible by regulators and by shareholder vote. So it's really up to the shareholders of Alignvest and of Sagicor to vote in favor as soon as is feasible to get this deal completed. Next question. Will the dividends of new Sagicor shares be taxed? All right, so this is a question that may have been addressed in the FAQs or the frequently asked questions put out by Sagicor in its explanatory statement. As we understand it, the company will be, after the deal is completed, will be domiciled in Bermuda and an application has been made for it to be tax resident in Barbados. What that means, a long story short, is that things have been put in place for your tax treatment to be the same as was the case, or as is the case currently. Again, it all depends on these approvals being received, and that treatment will have been, or the tax treatment will be as Sagicor's legal counsel and tax counsel would anticipate based on current legislation. Next question, who will be managing the new company? Okay, so that's a great question. Well, at present, Alignvest has elected to retain the majority of Sagicor's management. Interestingly, the current chief financial officer or the new chief financial officer of Sagicor is a gentleman by the name of, and I hope I don't butcher his name, Andre Musso, who is an officer also of Alignvest. So you can see there that Alignvest and Sagicor are, for want of a better word, aligning their interests to make sure that the management retains the experience and intellectual capital of the existing management team, but also gets the new blood and ideas and guidance and direction of some members, or a member at the very least, of the new owners, which is Alignvest Corporation, of the purported new owners. Does the new investment allow for dividend reinvestment? Well, it was mentioned that there is a dividend reinvestment plan, but some of the details of this have yet to be set out. So we will take a look at that as more information becomes available. Okay, are there any more questions? I think we have answered most of them. If we haven't answered your specific question at this particular time, please look out for our Q&A, from which we'll summarize all of the questions that were posed and present answers as best as possible. And these will be emailed directly to you. And again, thank you for your participation. Thank you for taking the time to view our Bourse webinar series. And we look forward to hosting you at our next webinar series sometime in April or thereabouts. Have a great afternoon, and we'll keep you informed as more becomes available.